My topic, as you see, is fluid networks and whether that's the next agency model. The traditional agency model is obsolete. We're hearing it from every corner, from clients, from agency veterans. There's no surprise. The old model's dead. We need to explore new forms. The need to change is a given. The question is what comes next. Obviously, there's a broad constellation of firms, all sizes, all types of organizations wrestling with the issues. And some are going to deal with them better than others. My hypothesis is that fluid networks, both of specialty agencies and lone rangers, will be the most effective partners for clients now in the new marketing universe. Now, as a disclaimer, I have a strong personal bias towards the fluid network because that's what my livelihood stems from. But to underscore that this presentation isn't just my point of view, I use quotes throughout that I gather in my research. So the voices are really coming from other people, not from me. In terms of my research, for background, I first searched the academic databases that Steinbeis presented. I searched the electronic database of the Boston Public Library, and frankly, I found almost nothing. So then I went to the web, and I looked for, I sort of did Google searches on things like Agency of the Future and those sorts of terms, and I found roughly 95 articles and blogs on the topic. I followed the blogs for about a year to track the evolution of the current thinking on the topic, and also to identify some of the key people that I wanted to interview. For my primary research, I did 52 interviews, many with people in this room, thank you. About half were with people in the northeast of the United States, so that obviously there's a certain bias there. And also, I found almost all my interviewees through my personal network, going first to people I knew and then asking them to connect me with people that they knew. And then I did supplement with some people that I found on the internet. I made a deliberate effort to speak with both practitioners and with clients and with people from groups of all sizes. And then because it tends to be a transitory industry, most of the people that I spoke with have been in more than one role. They've maybe worked with a large agency, with a small agency. They're now on the client side. They've gone back to the agency side. And I hope that that means that I got a more well-rounded picture of the issues and of the critical success factors. It's also interesting that there's already a built-in fluidity among practitioners. So ultimately, my research divided into 4 key questions. What's driving the change? What needs to change? What has to stay the same? What's important to success? And what are the options? First, what's driving change? Obviously, the fiscal crisis has created an Armageddon moment in the industry. But in my opinion, that just sped up what was already happening. It turned hairline cracks into cavernous holes that people can't ignore anymore. But it also creates a great moment of opportunity. The question is how we use it. Much more important is the digital revolution. It's changed the way we market. And I say the shouting is all over, which I mean in 2 ways. First is that you can no longer just shout at people. You have to engage customers. But second, all over in the sense that there are lots of conversations happening everywhere. And that's impossible for marketers to control. The web's become the de facto town square with people in online communities comparing their virtual cantaloupes and their insights. And the proliferation of information that's available at the click of a mouse means that consumers know way more than brands need choose to tell them. It means that brands need to be transparent because people on the far side of the globe know as much as the people down the street, but also that marketers need to know how to use the new media and use it intelligently. Which brings us to my second point, which is that creative now no longer has a preset solution. Yes, we use all the traditional methods. We use television, we use print, we use, judging by the contents of my mailbox, a ton of direct mail still. And we use all the digital methods from banner ads to mobile phone apps. But in today's 360-degree immersive marketing atmosphere, the best answer could be an event, it could be statement architecture, it could be the script that you train your sales staff on. So you need access to an incredibly wide range of skills and expertise to produce those. There's also a difference in how you measure success. Successful creative is subjective. Does it excite you? Does it inspire you? Does it entertain you? But today, measuring a successful marketing initiative can be totally objective. And that's not just did they see it or do they remember it, but it's did they act? Clients want measurable results. Finally, the digital age has changed the way we work. Everyone has the tools to collaborate, to create, and to compete. You have projects that live in the clouds. You have video conferencing from your computer. You have networks that link and support people who work on their own. And as a result, top creatives are no longer leashed to their desks. And the inverse is that talent could be anywhere in the world, and you need to be able to access that. So, absolutely without question, the environment's changed. And as we've been learning, when the environment changes, the businesses need to change too. The question is how. As I talked to people, I discussed which aspects of the traditional agency model are essential to keep, but also which have become outmoded. First, we're going to talk about what needs to go. There seem to be three key problems which are interrelated. One is what the agency delivers, one is the inability to team across boundaries, and one is the compensation model. In terms of what the agency delivers, you have to stop thinking in terms of tactics and take a much broader strategic view. You need to look at the entire customer journey. And that then becomes an economic issue, because agencies are in fact in the business of selling the talents of their billable employees. And you need to make a shift from the strategy being guided by the skills on staff to the skills being determined by the strategy. And that means you need to be able to access a new set of skills. Particularly in the digital realm, the universe is moving so rapidly that it's virtually impossible to keep the best practitioners on staff. Because as soon as you set your staff, then something shifts and they're no longer the best. The second issue is this inability to team across boundaries, disciplinary xenophobia. Virtually everyone I spoke to had some story about teams that didn't get along, whether that was within an agency, within a network, within multiple branches of an agency, and the reasons are multifold. There's the cultural issue, our team's better than your team. There's the structural issue, when every group has their own account team, their own planning team, their own creative team, their own traffic manager. There are just too many warm bodies to partner. But there are also financial issues. And for clients, if agencies have poorly integrated silos, then there's no advantage over forming their own teams of specialty agencies, where they really are sure that they're getting the best expertise in every area. And that's something I'll talk about later. But ultimately, finding ways to overcome these silos, this collaboration issue, both within and among agencies, is going to be really important going forward. The third issue is the compensation model. In the shifting landscape, the existing compensation structures no longer suit either the agencies or the clients. Going forward, if we can find a way to get profit through some sort of partnership or a stake in client success, either a pay-for-performance model or a profit-sharing model, then agencies are going to be more incented to help clients sell the product than to win awards. But that also ties back to the deliverables, because for agencies to really embrace this shift in marketing deliverables, then there needs to be a shift in incentives that ties to it. There's a fourth issue that's sort of an umbrella issue to all of these, and that's just excess. Bloat comes in a lot of forms. It comes in the big offices and the expense accounts that are referenced here, but it also comes in the scores of people that are deemed necessary to service a big account. Clients aren't interested. They're demanding lower costs and greater efficiencies. And one thing that I was really struck by was when I was interviewing people, the higher up the client was, the less interested they were in perks or in paying for lots of sort of junior account people. So there are clearly some things that need to change, but there are also some things that really shouldn't change, that are essential to successful marketing. One is the close client relationship. You need the connections to win the business, you need the relationship to keep the business, and you really need a strong client relationship to do good work, because you need the client's insights into the market, into the customer, into the product, and the best work comes through an iterative process. You also need a very strong team relationship, so you need to be able to depend on each other. And in the new, truly interdisciplinary environment, that's more the case than ever. Culture not only supports but breeds excellent work, and it keeps your staff happy and dedicated, which makes a big difference both to the client and to the agency. Collaboration. In many ways, it's an outgrowth of the team relationship, but it's also that sense of needing many minds working together to get the best solution, something that we've had some experience with. Clients really like continuity, a team that stays long-term on their account. They want a group that learns and understands their product, their market, their needs, and that ramp-up can take a long time, and they don't want to do it more than once. Communication is critical. Outbound, it's a corollary to the client relationship, but within a team, it's both the glue that binds the team together, and it's the grease that keeps the work moving. All marketing is local. The only question for clients working internationally or across the country, a country the size of the U.S., is whether that presence is better established through a global network or through a series of local partnerships. So we've seen the issues. We've seen the critical elements that need to remain. So now we're going to look at various agency structures through those filters. Now, obviously, there's a range of potential structures. It's almost infinite. But to simplify the discussion, I'm going to group them into 4 configurations, which these beautiful fruit plates illustrate. So we have the apple, which is the traditional large multinational agency, everything in one piece. The peach slices represent teams of specialized agencies that group together to serve a particular client. The strawberries, which I wish there were more of on the plate, represent fluid networks, so individual practitioners who come together for a particular client. And then the raspberries are the mess of crowdsourcing. So in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of fly through the top 2 and then really explore the 2 networked approaches in greater detail. And then at the end, I'll come back and look at all 4 of them compared together. It's certain that if you were starting the business today, no one would ever come up with the model we have now. Thus said, it's still important to consider it. In defense of the large traditional agency model, it's the critical factor. A lot of people believe that you need a global network to protect a global brand. By traditional agency, I mean the established name brand groups and the other agencies that imitate them. We've already covered most of these points in looking at what's important and what's broken. But I'd like to focus a little bit on the last one, which is a 20th century structure and mindset. To successfully market in the digital age, you need to start from a user-centric place. And that requires a very, very different mindset than agencies were originally architected on. There are a lot of people who think that reinventing an existing enterprise is next to impossible because the issues are baked into the DNA. And as Michael said to me, you need to have the guts to shrink and start again rather than trying to protect your turf. Traditional agencies aren't going to disappear overnight. There are a lot of clients who particularly point to they find a lot of comfort in trusting their brand to the care of a known, reputable agency. But ultimately, to survive, the agencies are going to need to change, and for a lot of big agencies, that may be hard to do. At the other end of the spectrum, we have clients directly outsourcing their creative. And clients have always outsourced. They call it pitches. But now there's a great guilt-free way to get more ideas for even less money. Again, it's not about organizational design here. It's about strategic alignment. Does crowdsourcing really meet all of clients' needs? Clearly, there's a place for it. But I think it may be to extend services to people and companies that wouldn't traditionally be candidates for top agencies, and also to jumpstart creative thought for other groups. It's not going to eliminate agencies, it's just going to supplement them. So that brings us to the 2 models that I really want to explore here. We have today a trend towards distributing tasks among a series of specialty agencies, sort of like today's approach to medicine. You don't have one doctor, you have a whole team of specialists that are going to solve your problem. As a sort of case study, I want to look at an initiative by Procter & Gamble that's called Brand Advertising Leader. And it's the way that their new system of working with agencies that most of their brands are employing. The idea is that they have an agency of record that's the primary organizer for ideas and execution, but the agreement insists that that agency engages specialist groups in every area, so they become like the general contractor building a house. They have to hire the roofer, they have to hire the carpenter, they have to hire the painter, and they're expected for those to be the best talent in the business, not just the talent they have in-house and not the talent from their sister agencies. They're responsible for results, they're responsible for the agencies really working together cooperatively, and they're responsible for paying everyone, so it's up to them to work out the financial incentives. So how does that work against the other areas in our matrix? The primary client relationship rests with the lead agency, but the client then still has to have a relationship with all the individual agencies. In P&G's case, they are very integrated in the decisions around which agency to use, and they also work with those agencies to make sure that the best ideas make it back to the lead agency and get sort of accessed by all the other agencies. There are other clients, like Merck Serono, whom I quote here, who are actually orchestrating the multiple partnerships themselves. So that means that there's a new level of complexity to the client relationship. On the flip side, they maybe have greater trust in their agencies because now they're working, not only are they working with known agencies, but they're working with a lot of known agencies, so any risk is mitigated by the fact that they'd spread it out over a group of agencies. Plus, they feel like they're getting the best knowledge in every area. Obviously, the network becomes as global as you need it to be, and if you need feet in the street in Shanghai and feet in the street in Des Moines, you've got them both. The real beauty of this model is that every part of the marketing plan is executed by a group of people who is chosen specifically for their expertise in that sector. And you're also sure that the skills are going to fit the media solution and not the other way around. As far as dedicated teams are concerned, it's the same issue as the big agencies. You try, but sometimes things change. The real issue, I think, possibly with this model is that teamwork is an absolutely essential factor. Clients expect everyone to be united on their behalf, and agencies can't afford to indulge in conflict or backbiting or passing the blame. But it's easy for P&G to say that they insist on collaboration. They're the 500-pound gorilla. Maybe a lot harder for smaller clients, and that might make the solution less effective for them. And the issue with collaboration is that when you bring teams together just for their skills, then there's a big danger of culture clash. How do you make sure they communicate, and how do you build trust? And you could end up with a tug of war. So it might be that agencies need to be partnered as much for their compatible cultures as for their expertise, but that then undermines the whole principle behind the model. Looking at our last 2 points, specialty agencies tend to be smaller, so they may be less bureaucratic. And at least one of my interviewees has found that this arrangement was dramatically more cost-effective. Okay. The next progression of this model would be fluid networks, where you have a lean internal group who would then become the link between the clients and the team. The team itself is entirely outsourced. Sometimes it's on the web. More often it's in some sort of a walled community of carefully vetted contributors who are then organized around a specific client or a specific project. Within that framework, the core team supplemented by virtual resources, there's still a wide range of possibility. Which sources are internal? Who curates the talent? How virtual is virtual? And not surprisingly, particularly at this incipient stage, the answers are pretty diverse, but I'd like to look at 2 models. The first one I'm calling Club Haggerty. Sir John Haggerty says that if he was starting an agency today, it would be like a club. There'd be a core team of 20 full-time salaried people who'd run the club, and then a second group of 100 to 200 members who'd be paid a retainer, and then an additional per-project fee. Associate members, who of course would be carefully vetted, would have full access to the facilities but only be paid for the actual project work. Key to his vision is the place itself. has subsidized food and drink, organized events and outings, private meeting rooms, probably a sauna. It's a place where people really want to be. You can almost smell the leather. That atmosphere is important to him because he really wants people to come into work. He thinks that the eye-to-eye communication is absolutely crucial to doing good work. And so then you need a place that's attractive to people to come and hang out. So while this is just a paper, there's actually an agency in Australia that seems to be working very much on this model. They're not nearly as luxurious, and they're not nearly as large. They have tens of people as opposed to hundreds of people. But they still have that walled network. People come in, do their work in the place, and they seem to be very successful. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the agency Victors and Spoils, which launched in November. They have 6 people in-house. They crowdsource projects to a walled community of talent. Right now, that's 750 members. They're hoping to grow it to 5,000. Incidentally, they consider every function to be creative. And I'll explain the process by sort of walking through a recent engagement. When you sign up to be one of their creative team, you check off your areas of expertise or your areas of interest. So when a brief comes in, they then send it out to the people who've pre-qualified for that brief. They recently sent out a brief to 250 people. Within 20 minutes, 80 people had gotten back saying they were interested. Of those 80, then they chose 20 that they wanted to have pursue it. They're going to pay those 20 people for their ideas. When they get the 20 ideas in, they then chose 5 that they really like and do what they call curating them, which is basically pushing them further. And when they get those 5 ideas to a point that they're proud of, then they take that to the client, and the client awards a winner. Well, obviously, there are at least 750 people, creatives in the world, who think this is a good idea. And evidently, clients have been very receptive, too. In just 6 months, they've already done 14 projects for global Fortune 200 companies. So how does the fluid network model work against our framework? Relationships still matter, and they tend to be very, very personal between the point person and the client. Trust has to be earned, and that's going to be easier for people with big names or people who have existing client relationships. Obviously, these teams can be as local or as global as you need them to be, and that's easier if you use a model that doesn't require eye-to-eye contact. Even more than the networked agencies, fluid networks can rope in precisely the expertise that they need on any particular topic. And when you're working particularly in the digital world, having access to people who are actively engaged in creating the next generation projects or products can really differentiate your end deliverable. Independent producers like a steady client. There's a lot of security in knowing that you're important to someone's brand and a lot of camaraderie in being part of a team. So when things are working well, the team may stay intact maybe even longer than an agency team, which is a little ironic. As we've learned, culture is set by the processes and expectation leadership puts in place. Is there a star system? Does a Tuesday deliverable really mean Tuesday, or is Friday all right? How do you define success? And are people rewarded directly for it? Those dynamics affect the atmosphere of even the most virtual community. There's definitely a spirit of collaboration. People in these networks learn very, very quickly who they can count on and who they can't. Non-producers have nowhere to hide because everyone knows whether or not you posted your deliverable. And they're likely to get booted off the team, and they're certainly not going to be invited back next time. By their very nature, fluid networks have less bureaucracy and therefore less drag. And since time is money and bureaucracy costs a lot of money, that means the work's not only delivered sooner, but it's delivered at a far lower cost. John Windsor estimates their cost is 25% of the old model, and that means that traditional agencies would have to cut out 75% to compete on cost. He figures that agencies are going to have a hard time doing that. Finally, by virtue of being fluid, these networks are able to constantly adjust to market conditions, to new client needs, to new technological developments. They're totally open to innovation. So, how do the 4 models compare? I've done this quantitative rating, and it's clearly extremely subjective, but there is a rationale behind it. Traditional agencies excel in nurturing client relationships. Crowdsourcing eliminates any real human connection. It's a purely commercial transaction. Traditional agencies primarily utilize the talent they have on staff. Crowdsourcing lets clients access talent anywhere in the world. Traditional agencies have too much bureaucracy. Crowdsourcing takes too much client management. All four models can deliver on the local knowledge, global reach paradigm. The two network systems have the potential to retain many of the strengths of a traditional agency, including the solid client relationship, the solid team relationship, the culture, the collaboration, the consistency. Fluid networks, crowdsourcing, and to a certain extent networks of specialty agencies outpace the traditional models in three key areas. They're truly media agnostic. They offer up-to-the-minute specialized expertise, and they're significantly more cost-effective. So what does that mean? To be clear, the need for a good agency is not going away. In fact, just the opposite. In this increasingly complex and constantly shifting marketing landscape, brands more than ever are going to rely on outside counsel. Before, they couldn't produce a Super Bowl ad on their own. Now they can, but they can't keep up with the disparate options. So what changes is the agency model, particularly if I can work this. Today there's no need to have the expense of keeping the talent in-house, and it's not possible to keep the breadth of possible skills and real expertise on hand. If your competition's able to offer equal or better solutions for a quarter of the price, you're going to be out of business. But as the model evolves, there are going to be a host of solutions. Independent agencies will need to streamline and specialize and then team together in truly networked organizations. Fluid networks will supply the flexibility, the expertise, and the cost savings of crowdsourcing, but bring the strategic thinking and high-level creative and single touch-point convenience of an agency. Ultimately, there's not going to be a single answer. There'll be a kaleidoscope of models in the future, just as there are now. But the successful ones are going to be highly and increasingly permeable, letting that expertise come in and out. And they're going to constantly evolve and adapt. Thank you. Questions?